business tips to successfully start and run your business so your business doesn't run you. And more importantly, we provide personal development tools to create a better version of yourself to provide the solid foundation for your life and business to stand upon. This is the Biz Reveal, and I'm your host, Craig Sawyer. This week's episode is sponsored by Sawyer Health Solutions. Protecting what's important to you is what's important to us. Get your free health insurance quote at SawyerHealthSolutions.com. As the founder of BombTech Golf, an e-commerce store with over $20 million sold online since 2012, Tyler Sullivan has come to learn the formula for running successful and profitable e-commerce businesses. Tyler, or Sully as his friends call him, also runs Ecom Growers, where he and his team have helped countless Shopify owners add 6 to 7 figures in additional sales by optimizing email systems and ad campaigns to find hidden revenue streams. After the show, learn more at www.bombtechgolf.com. This is the Biz Reveal podcast with this week's guest, Tyler Sullivan.
Yeah, so my name is Tyler Sullivan. Friends call me Sully, and I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I started my first business in 2011, BombTech Golf. And I was just trying to compete in the home run derby of golf and called World Long Drive. And I was not very good, but it got me hooked into the sport again. So I went to a local competition. One of my buddies from high school was like, hey, let's go try this. We both went. He didn't qualify, but I did. And I hit a ball like 340 yards, which is actually not that far, but it was far enough to qualify. And I just became obsessed, and I started assembling my own golf clubs, and I had at one point like 40 golf drivers in my bag. And then I don't know, I just had this is way back in the day, way before like Shopify, and it was much harder to launch a website. So I made like the world's worst website. It had like a cartoon character on it flexing. And then it was like 6 months later, I finally sold something, and I was on a boat, not a yacht, on Lake Champlain in Vermont, and it blew my mind. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
I just sold something not working in traditional sense. I said, I'm just going to do more of that. So really from there, it was just I started documenting early days on Facebook, and I had no expectations of what I was doing, and really just brought guys along for the journey, asked them engaging questions throughout the process, and ended up designing my own brand and product with my local college. I mean, this sounds like a lot because it is, but anyways, through that process of documenting, I built an audience, right? And then I used that very small, it was like 800 likes at the time. And in 2012, 800 likes means 800 people see your stuff. Not the same today. But I went from selling like a couple clubs a year to I launched our own brand of product, which was a huge risk. Cashing my 401k, no big deal. And I did 10K in a day, and I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Let's do more of that. and really from there, I just kept on scaling. And really my second big epiphany, not to go too deep in the weeds, but this is kind of like my real kickstart is, and people can probably relate to this. I was fired from my day job, and it was the week before Thanksgiving, and I just found out my wife was pregnant.
Geez, trifecta.
So it was that was the kick in the ass and the full pressure, high pressure moment, and probably the hardest year of my life. But then I was able to scale that up, and now we do, 8 figures a year with 2 employees, and I have another company. So there's a lot of steps in between that, but my journeys from no expectations, doing something I love, and just use social media to kind of document it and scale it kind of to the moon.
That's crazy too, that it was just something that you stumbled across. Like, I wish we could all be so lucky, but I know like you said, there's a lot of hard work in between, that first step and where you are now, that, everybody only sees the tip of the iceberg. They don't get to see all the stuff that's underneath the water there. And that's the stuff that counts. So basically everything that you did then, what you built around was e-commerce. And I know a lot of us have heard of e-commerce. Some people know what it is. Some people don't know what it is. So for the folks that don't, can you just give like a real quick explanation of what e-commerce is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been so deep in the weeds, I don't think I've defined it in a long time. But so I started just with selling direct because that was my only real channel. No one wanted to deal with us in wholesale or retail. Um, so we just, that's selling direct consumer via like a Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, anytime you shop online. We don't sell on Amazon and stuff like that because we want to own our customers. But e-com right now is kind of like a trending thing, which we could have never saw coming with COVID. Um, so for a lot of people, retail is no longer an option. So it's like I've kind of been waiting for this moment for a long time, and it's just accelerated our growth and fast forwarded us 5 to 10 years. So really, man, if you're not selling, if you're not selling online, I really don't know what you're doing in 2021.
I was going to say, it's almost like not accepting credit cards, right? Like, how do you, and there are some of these businesses around that don't take credit cards and they don't want to pay the 2.5%. I'm sorry, if you can't pay that 2.5%, you shouldn't be in business, right? Because you're missing, I mean, I don't even know what the percentage is. It's got to be 90% of your business is going to be on cards. So same thing with e-commerce. And like you said, with COVID, hell, nobody saw that one coming, but it was a necessity. I mean, obviously Amazon was already exploding. So that's kind of a good gauge as far as the e-commerce thing and buying online. It just, like you said, it kind of just ramped it up 5 or 10 years earlier than probably what it would have been had it not been for COVID.
Oh,
yeah. So we already know why e-commerce is necessary, because I think that was pretty much it right there, right? You can pretty much do everything you want to from home. You can buy food. You can buy literally anything that you want to from home. What are the different platforms that people can use if they want to start or maybe boost their own e-commerce business where people can buy from them online?
I mean, I think selling online. So I've got another company that is an agency model where we have a service where we help other e-com brands, but I think everyone overcomplicates e-commerce, and I think just they think it's all you need to be deep in the tech, part of it. It's really not. Like it used to be. Like when I first launched, you had to know how to develop websites. You had to know how to do all this stuff that today the barrier to entry is very low, which is a good and bad thing. It's definitely more competitive now because anyone can start it and it's easy. But really, it's a function of traffic. Can you get people to your website? And then there's the back end. It's like, if you get them to buy or subscribe to your list, can you get them to buy again? And it's really like, so I look at it and it's like, it's not that complicated. It's like, can you run Facebook ads, Google ads, and then use your email? And that's really the whole core, use Shopify, that. And really, so all you really need is the right product offer fit. And I think this is where a lot of people get, and again, I don't deal and haven't started a new company in a long time, but if someone's starting out, I think the biggest trap with any business is doing something you don't love and like trying to do something that's trending. It's like, I don't sell women's leggings, man. You know what I mean? I love golf and then made it a business. Therefore, it felt like when I was working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, which I did for 5 years, which almost killed me. It didn't feel like work, you know what I mean? Whereas if I was trying to sell women's leggings, it would feel like a grind every day because I know nothing about it.
Exactly. And don't care.
That's a big, I don't think it's hard to sell online, but I think you gotta know your shit and be in a industry or a niche that you already are doing. And like, what's the point of running a business unless it's something you enjoy?
Yeah. And if there's no passion behind it, I mean, if you don't really care about what you're doing, it shows, and you're not going to be nearly as successful. The customer base isn't going to be there and things like that. You mentioned like Facebook ads, and this is a topic I've had on more shows of mine than I can count. And I love that so many people are talking about it and that we have these discussions because there's a different point of view from everybody that I talk to on how to use them, the best way to use it, how much money you should and should not be spending on it, what you should do prior to paying for ads. Like, should you try to get organic leads first and build that base up as a test market for, who the best demographic is for you to point towards? What's your advice? How do you use, Facebook ads or any of these other paid ads online?
I think it depends on the business. If we're talking e-com, you need Facebook and Google. If you can't run those properly, you're not going to scale. Like we spend like $10,000 a day to give you some context.
Wow.
But that's also, we're doing a couple million a month. You know what I mean? So it's a little different scale.
Scale that down. Percentage wise, do you have a number that you could say what the percentage would be?
we use return on ad spend metrics. So if we spend X, we want to get Y, right? And so that's like easiest way to measure it. We do have a set marketing budget per month, like that we have, but it is loose. So it's like, it's our targeted spend, but if we could still scale and hit a return ad spend number, we'll push it harder. Or likewise, if we're not getting a return on ad spend number we want, we'll scale it back. So we have, monthly, we actually do this for the whole year, forecasting goals, and then we tweak it based on my ad guy does on like a daily or weekly metric. But like on my agency, we spend $100 a day on Facebook, and it doesn't drive the results because we're going B2B. So we're working with brands like myself that are e-com brands doing between 2 and 30 million a year. And so we do a lot of cold email for that.
Okay.
And podcasts. So it really depends on what type of business you are and who you're targeting. If you're targeting a large pool consumer market, selling physical product, you got to know how to use Facebook and Google. If you're a B2B services business targeting a very small niche, like we're going after, there's only, I don't know the exact number, 10,000 companies we're really targeting. There's no way we're going to easily hit them with Facebook. It just is not the right platform for that. So I would challenge you to say, what are you trying to sell and who are you trying to market? And that's how I think about Facebook. But Facebook, if you're selling physical products and you can't make it work, it's really a function of the offer is wrong.
Gotcha.
Like you got to have an offer that people want. And I think a lot of people that are maybe engineers, designers, and they are passionate may fall in love with the product that their market doesn't want. So really let the market tell you. And the easiest way to do that, like we're doing this, my wife's starting a company, and we're just testing different ads and with different products. And it's like, I told her, like, and she's very smart, but we're not falling in love with the product because we like it. Because it doesn't matter what I like, what she likes, it's what the audience likes, and that's a hard learning, especially if you're been working on something for a long time. So for us, we try to get stuff to market and do micro tests or micro launches where we don't make 50,000 units. We'll make 500, test them, and then if it goes well and hits our metrics, then we'll order 50,000.
Right. Because like you said, even though you may like something, what you like doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah.
It's what people are going to buy. So you can invest, and this happens all the time. Especially you see this a lot in like restaurants and stuff like that. They'll release these limited time only deals, and they just crash. Or if you remember back in the late 80s, I think, with the different like clear Pepsi or the new Coke. This will work, and it was the biggest bomb ever. So it's not about what you think people want. You got to go out there and do some test markets and make sure that it's what they want, because that's ultimately what you're in business to do, is sell to your audience.
Yeah, we do a lot of asking. Like we use email, Facebook, Instagram, really to kind of test the market. You know what I mean? Like and really like my thesis with any business is just asking questions and getting engagement. And that's what I did early days. With the golf brand, I would just be designing the club, and as I was designing it, I would literally ask them, like, hey, what do you guys think of this? What do you think of this color? What do you think of that? What do you play now? And as I did that, I was so small, I had no other option to get feedback. But it helped us actually build the product, and they felt like they were part of it because they were. Yeah. So it allowed me to go totally organic, just document. It did take time, effort, and actually giving a shit, which is the missing piece of a lot of this. But and then it allowed me to sell the product because they felt part of the journey, and that was kind of another accidental thing I did. But, now it's more of a function of scaling ad spend and systems and operations because we're, bigger, and it's a very different business than when I was fired from my day job and side hustle.
I think you can agree, like most of us that go into business for ourselves, that it was getting fired that actually was a blessing in disguise. Same situation with me. I got fired. And I was at a point in my career where I was like, I'm just not very good at what I thought I was really good at, or B, God, I just don't want to do this anymore. And you make that decision. Sometimes it's a leap of faith, and you did it too. You mentioned, doing things like what you're doing right now, being on podcasts as part of your marketing efforts. Talk about that a little bit. How did that come about? Like, what brought that up for you, and how's it been working?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of just go to path of least resistance and try not to fabricate or make things that are more difficult. So like this other company and podcast interviews as a channel all started because I was getting written up in different not magazines, but yeah, it was magazine, Inc. magazine, Entrepreneur. They're all online, but I guess I call them magazines.
Right.
And then some econ specific case studies came out on BombTech, and then I started getting messages like, "Hey, you guys are crushing it. Can you help my e-commerce brand?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "This is when I was deep in the weeds." I was like, "Yo, good luck. Thanks for reaching out. I hope you crush it." And then my partner, or my first employee, Chris at BombTech, was running all my email, and he was crushing it. We had this case study from Klaviyo, which is the platform we send all our email from. He's like, "Hey, do you mind if I help them out and do a side hustle?" I was like, "Dude," and he was the hardest working employee ever. He would message me like 2 a.m. from the bars. He was like 22 years old. He was like, "Dude, do you see the conversion rate on the website?" I was like, he was the hardest working kid in the world. I go, "Listen, whatever you want to do, I'll support you." And so he closed 3 deals. And I said, "Just let me know how it goes in a month." So he's still working at BombTech. He did this on the side. This is like 4 years ago. I said, "Just let me know how the results are." He comes back. He's like, "I doubled their revenue from email." I'm like, "All right, that's legit." I go, "What do you want to do?" And he goes, "I want to scale this up." And so I said, "Let's partner up." So we became 50-50 partners. He then quit BombTech to do this full time. And now we're doing 7 figures there, 35 clients, and we scaled that up over 3 years. You know, we're trending to do some crazy numbers there, but it was really just a function of people already messaging me and asking for help, and us just turn into a repeatable service at scale. You know what I mean? That can get results. So now what I do, most of what I do is just doing podcasts like this, which are fun. I get to talk about the business, and we get some leads there, and it's really more of like an omnipresence thing. But we found that the podcasts have been, if someone hears this on a podcast and I just tell my normal story, they can relate to me as an ecom founder because I'm like them. And that's the exact client we service is me. So I'm a client. It's like the hair club for men guy. It's like I'm an owner, but I'm also a client,
Right.
which is true. I'm still a client of that of my other agency. So that's kind of how I've done it. So my schedule now is like I work on my BombTech business more on a high level operational thing, 6 to 8 hours a week. And then ecom growers, I work probably 4 to 8 hours a week, just on like high level stuff and supporting my partner. I'm like, "Dude, whatever you need." We just have a lot of, strategy calls where we go back and forth and I just give him support, because I'm the old man in the equation. But yeah, so podcasts are fun. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And the more I do this, because I started the podcast, I mean, like literally it was within a week or two of COVID starting last week. Right. And then there's this big explosion of podcasts coming out because everybody's like, well, we're at home anyway. Let's see what we can do here. And a lot of them drop out before they get 5, 6, 7 episodes and stuff like that. But the more guests I have on this way, the more I'm finding that podcasting and being a guest on a podcast is like the new marketing way of doing things. Like it just gets you out in front of other audiences that you may not have gotten out in front of before. So I think that's awesome. I mean, and this is another product of what has happened with COVID, right? I mean, the world has changed in so many different ways. I mean, and definitely the business world, and mostly for the better. It's just kind of sped the technology up. And I think it's really cool that podcasting has been, a main driver of marketing in this age. So that's pretty cool that it kind of came about. What is like the biggest reason or the pet peeve or whatever you might call it, but the biggest reason why e-commerce sites might fail? Like when you were doing it, what was like the biggest failure of your e-commerce site that you were trying to get right that you got completely wrong and now you see it, but you didn't at the time?
I think it's just mostly shiny ball syndrome. I think a lot of people getting into e-com are new to business and new to e-commerce. You know what I mean? But like, so the overall strategies that work are the fundamentals, but there's so many apps, hacks, tactics, strategies that are just distractions. And like my worst year in business was the year I tried everything. 2017 or 2018. And I went down the rabbit hole of marketing and just tested everything and lost sight of the fundamentals.
Is that a bad thing though? I mean, because you want to kind of test everything to see what does and does not work. Was that a bad thing, or was it a learning experience?
It was a bad thing for me.
Okay.
I learned that I'm not that important in the business, and there's only so many big levers you can truly pull.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's like, there's all these shiny balls and all these like things you can try, and it really hurt our revenue. It was our worst revenue year. Worst everything year. And I think that's the hardest thing to do, because you want to do as much as you can to drive the business forward. But I really just think you need to be good at the core things, which is traffic, email, and then the product, right? And if you need to do every aspect of the business well to then hire for them. Like, that's the second part. So like, my key mistake is I fired someone that was performing, one of our ad guys, because I didn't know enough. So like, how I look at it in like the grand scheme of things is, number one, you should be able to get an e-com brand solo to at least $1 million with no one. Absolutely no one. Do it yourself. If you need more people to do that, you have a problem. It will be a lot of work, but you have to learn ads, email, fulfillment, customer service, all the stuff, so you can then hire people in each segment and know if they're doing a good job.
Gotcha.
And so like, my big learning was in that year that I said I had a one down year. Really, every other year has been just crushing. I fired someone based on feel, not metrics. So I didn't know ads enough because I had lost touch with it. And that whole year I had to learn Facebook ads. I hired and fired 10 agencies that year. It was like so painful. I got to a point where, and this is what I do now, this is something that I use in every business. I have a vetting process. So what I do is, if someone wants to earn our business, I don't care what company it's for, I do a 1 hour paid screen share, where I say, listen, you're the expert and I'll know what I'm doing. So I have ads set up. I did myself for Facebook. I was getting like a 3.9x or whatever, which is okay. It wasn't great. I said, if you beat my ads, you're hired, and I'll pay you for your time. You build it with me, and we'll go. So I went through 12 people on that 1 hour screen share. And a lot of these guys that were huffing and puffing and pounding on their chest, they were the best, they knew everything. They absolutely bombed. We actually got into the back end of it. They didn't know what they were doing. They set up stuff that failed. And then my last guy I chose that outperformed me and knew what he was doing, he's been my ad guy for 3 years. So it's just like, now I take that same approach in any capacity I can. I say, listen, you guys are the expert. Let's do a 1 hour screen share or a video, whatever, so I can vet you and I'll pay you for your time. And that just has saved me so much time in terms of just, if I'm going to find an expert to outsource something, just versus like, let's sign an engagement, work with them for 6 weeks and then find out they suck.
Exactly. Yeah. You're kind of making them prove themselves to you first, rather than just going out and hiring them because that's what they do. That's smart. I like that idea a lot, because that's part of the reason why I haven't done some of the things that I want to try. And again, you know, like you mentioned, you know, I've tried so many different aspects, because for me, I'm in the service business, not like an actual product. So it's a little bit different. Actually, it's a lot different when you're going out there and you're trying to market yourself and things like that. Because like you said, you know, you are testing your market by asking them questions. When you sell health insurance, you can't say, hey, you know, what would you how would you build? I guess you can say, how would you build your plan? But
well, you can ask relevant questions that are not specific to that, like that they may want to know answers to. You know what I mean? So it's like, anything can turn into engagement versus like shouting what you want them to have. Like, I don't know anything about health insurance other than I pay a ton of money for it.
That's so pretty common, yeah.
I'm sure there's a question that someone that has a pain point would need to ask, or something that, or something like whatever it is that they want to talk about. You know what I mean? Even if it's not that sexy, and we do it a lot just on like the email side, because it gets us from the promotions tab to the inbox.
When you're self-employed, whether as an independent contractor or a business owner, when it comes to health insurance, you're on your own. Health insurance for the self-employed individual is imperative. When you get sick or injured, you aren't working and you don't get sick days. You may end up facing staggering medical expenses and loss of income. Health risks and uncertainties are a part of life. You can't always plan when you get sick, but you can be prepared for the financial aspect. The best way to be prepared against uncertain health risks is with the right health insurance plan. Call Sawyer Health Solutions today for your free consultation and quote. Allow us to put a plan together that makes sense for your situation. Call 239-677-9877 or go to our website at sawyerhealthsolutions.com. Protecting what's important to you is what's important to us.
So when you're just blasting people and no one replies and you get no action, you go to spam.
Right.
But when you ask them a question, they reply. Guess where you are? You're in their inbox. So when you're in the inbox, you game over. Now you're talking direct one-to-one and your message is getting seen. So we do that for a number of reasons. But I mean, if we're doing service-based, cold email has been really good, for B2B stuff.
Well, let's go into that. What's the best way to build an email strategy? Like, how did you start doing yours? Obviously, you got to have email addresses to begin with to be able to send the messages to. So take us from the first step on that. How do you build your strategy?
Yeah, so there's two different emails. So it's like what I'm talking like in e-commerce, people go to your website, like they go to BombTech Golf. They either buy a club or they sign up for a discount, right? So there's two ways we get subscribers. Our sub rate's like 15%. Like they don't buy, they'll pop into, it's like a spin to win thing, or spin for a discount thing gets 15%. So from there, we just nurture them and tell our story. And we do the same things as I just told you. So our philosophy is we write native to the platform, simple and direct emails. So we do a lot of plain text. We do a lot of one sentence questions, like what golf driver do you play now? And that gets them to reply. And then it just starts a conversation with our team.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but when you do that question, is that in the email or is that in the subject heading? Because that's one of the hardest things for me is grabbing their attention with the subject heading.
Our subject line for that is question. It's
just literally
so
question.
yeah. And email, I think, is one of the most, and I think this is one of the traps with just email in general. E-com owners, obviously, any owner of a business wants to maximize their potential with everything they do.
Sure.
And email is one of those things where they tend to overdo it, where they design these beautiful newsletters with 50 calls to actions, the blog posts, this stuff. No one cares. You want to have one direct call to action. You want to make it native. When you send an email to your buddy, do you make a HTML designed email that's 8 pages long, or do you send them a text email?
Yeah, it's just like a 1 or 2 liner.
Right. Yeah. So if you get a 1 or 2 liner in email, you'd be surprised from a company. You'll probably engage with that versus just what it looks like a promotion, right? So that's one of our approaches. We only have one call to action on every email, and we just try to keep it fun and ask questions that get clicks and get opens. And really, the other thing with email is just having a consistent calendar. This sounds so simple, and this is why I say fundamentals win. But like the first thing we do with any client we bring on is we set their calendar days and times and email types right out of the gate. Boom. These are your days. These are your times. And you'd be surprised how much that frees them up as an entrepreneur. It's just to know their email's handled. This is their whole calendar for the month. We do it all up ahead. So literally hands off versus it being so reactive and just never getting done and then being done poorly. So and for us, it's, on average, my store or other stores on average do 30 to 50% of revenue from email. And really, like, if someone were to buy my company or if Facebook ads died, what is the only asset I own? That's my email list. My email and customer list is the business.
It's your book of business. Yeah. Taking it with you.
That's the whole thing. So if I launch a new product, if I haven't been treating my customer list and email list well, I'm dead. They're not going to buy it. So really that's, in my opinion, the whole business. And a lot of people just look at it as let me just spray out messages and get money. It's like a money machine, and then they just get burnt out, and your email list is useless,
Well, obviously with a list, I mean, it's going to be a big size, right? With a company like yours, there's a lot of email addresses in there. So obviously you have some type of automation that you use. What do you use? Not that you're promoting it because you're making any money from it, but what do you use to automate it, and how are you using that automation?
Yeah, we use, and all of our clients use Klaviyo. They're the number one email marketing platform for e-com brands. Any legit e-com brand is using Klaviyo. Like for our services business, we honestly don't do a lot of email. It's mostly phone calls. So we have an agency that helps us set up appointments. And then all we do from there is we have my partner, Chris, who does the calls, does the audits and all of that. So it really is dependent on your industry, but for e-com, Klaviyo is what we use for email marketing.
Now, does that work in this? I've not heard of them before, so I'd like to look into that, but does that work in a similar manner as like MailChimp?
Yeah, it's essentially that on steroids,
Okay.
but it's specific to e-com. So it's like you can build out any flow you want, abandoned cart, browse abandonment. They buy this, you send them this. The segmenting is really powerful. It's just, if you're selling online, you can track every dollar per every email. It's just, you have to have it. It's like a no-brainer. And then they also have SMS, so like text messaging, which is a big one too. But if you're doing services, your list is still valuable. It's just, we usually we don't drive them to the site to buy. We want them to set up a call. So
Okay.
so either business, we have one call to action, right? It's like buy a golf club or sign up for a call. And I think the key, like overall, for the audience is probably general business or entrepreneurs. It's like, I see the biggest benefit in niching and having one focus. So like my agency only does email marketing for e-com. We don't do ads. We don't do CRO. We don't do anything else. And that allows not only us to have a very clear focus on the front end, but also on our back end from a scaling up people process. We can scale really easily, you know what I mean? Whereas if you do everything, it's very hard to scale yourself and build systems to not work in the business. So our whole goal is to not do anything in the business, which is like a lot of people, and I'll take a step back, but when I had my second kid, I said, this is crazy. I can't work 20 hours a day. I'm like, I can't do it. So I took 6 weeks off before having her, and sales went up. And that made me realize that all the prep work I did to set up systems and have the right people, made me almost irrelevant. And I got obsessed and addicted to systems. And you have to have scale to do this. But like in our agency, we were kind of stuck at the 30 client number, and we couldn't scale up or down because we didn't have systems. So we literally it's been very painful. The last 6 months, we revamped, simplified, systematized, and now we can kind of, our goal is 180 clients, but we're going to scale to 70. We're on track right now because we have systems and it's simple, and we can bring on anyone, and they have exact, like, step one, you do this, step two, and it's go slow to go fast. But that's what I found. It's like being super niche with your offer and having that product offer fit is everything. And then it's if you have product offer fit, can you get out of your own way? And for me, it took 2 kids and being fired to get out of my own way so that you're not the bottleneck, which is the number one problem I see. It's like, you're trapped in the business, you're the expert, and my partner, that's what he was. He was trapped. He's the expert. He's like, dude, I got to do all this. I'm like, no, you need to get out. Now he's out of the day-to-day, and now we're scaling to the moon. So there's many phases I just went through there, but that's what gets me excited, is just building systems that make it better for clients, make it better for employees, and now we can scale up.
And like you mentioned earlier too, that you kind of have to do all that stuff yourself until you hit, a certain point. Like I think you used the $1 million point, because you need to know how to do that so that when you do get to that point where you grow and you have those systems in place where somebody else is doing it, if they're doing a good job or not. Because if you've never done it before and you don't know how it works, you have no way of gauging it. So you kind of have to know how that works. For you, like what metrics do you use to gauge some of those things on how it works? Like I know there's a lot of different areas there, but if you can point out like maybe 2, 3, 4 different metrics on how like an email campaign is, if it's effective or not.
Yeah. So in e-com, it's really simple because it's all there. It's all online. You can see all the numbers. In the agency, it's a little more complicated, but we use Help Scout for customer service. So like, my customer service guys are in-house. Those are my 2 guys. They get full healthcare. They're paid well, and I don't need to be on their shoulder, micromanaging, talk to them. I rarely even talk to them. Like they'll ping me with stuff occasionally, but I use Help Scout, which has a customer service rating on every email. And it gives me every month, every day, what's our satisfaction score. And this is just, so we have like a 99% satisfaction rating. And if it drops below that, I can see exactly why, and we can diagnose it. But that's how I can see high level, boom, customer service is dialed in, or we got a problem. And so I check that once a month. Like, all right, we're on par, we're screwed up. And then I have my Facebook return ad spend number. If we hit a 3 or 5X, whatever my number is for that month, we're good. Klaviyo for email, we have depending on what we're launching, if we're not launching a ton of products, we have we want to shoot for a 28 to 32% of revenue. And this is all on each platform. But if we're doing a lot of launches, it could be up to 50%. So it is dependent, that number. But if I look at those three things at a core, that's the whole business. And the agency, we're actually looking to do this with the clients. It's a little different, but it's not. I mean, that's a limiting belief. We're going to put together a monthly or quarterly survey. So they do the same thing they do like our customers at the e-com brand. So they give us a rating, and it's going to be sent from a third party where they can rate us out of 100, what they like, what they don't like. And then, because when we get to 180 clients, we're going to have no idea what each client is doing, right? It's impossible to have your hands in there. So at a high level, we want to have one board that says client satisfaction 98%. This is the issues, and then if there's an issue, you can see it and diagnose it. So that's how we kind of look at it. But there's a lot that goes into that. But those are the key metrics, and then cash in bank.
That's the biggest one, right?
And that's the two different businesses now that I have. Both are so different, not to ramble about this, but e-com is more scalable, less time intensive if set up properly, but it can be a cash flow beast. Like if you don't have a lot of capital, I wouldn't recommend doing it because we manufacture our own products. So I have to spend money before the product gets here, right? And sometimes it's a lot of money that you throw up and you need working capital loans. Whereas a service business like our agency is more people intensive. We actually have more employees there, although we're much smaller. Our employees are our product or cost of goods, right? But that is harder to scale up and has more of that. But from a cash flow standpoint, it's all cash up front. It's service. There's no overhead really other than the people. So it's a very different business. Both have their challenges, but we'll see what the third one is when I launch that. But right now, it's cool to see the difference. And if people are starting new companies, the lowest threshold or barrier to entry is definitely a service.
If with your businesses, obviously you're already well established. So using the well established business as an example, where has your biggest, I guess, when you invest in what you're getting back, your ROI, is it email campaigns? Is it text campaigns? Is it Facebook? Is it LinkedIn? Where are you seeing the best ROI at that you're investing in and getting the most back out of it?
Yeah, the highest ROI thing is definitely email. I mean, that's the thing that drives the most profit. We can do an email and launch something, do 100K in a day, no problem. Facebook is Facebook and Google is the steady lifeblood of the business. You got to be able to spend paid traffic to scale any physical product business, right? So you got paid traffic, which is like your daily spending. You got to do that to survive. And then email, in my opinion, is that's really your profit maker, your ROI booster, and the biggest revenue driver to the bottom line at the end of the day.
Okay. And do you guys send out newsletters or keep a blog or anything like that to keep any of your customers engaged in that sense?
No. We do blog posts, but that's for SEO reasons.
Okay.
We don't send SEO blogs to the email list. We really have a cadence of we send offers, and then we have, like we talked about before, engagement emails where we ask questions. We do a lot of would you rather? Would you rather have to play golf with your boss every day, or would you rather not play golf at all? And so people think that's funny. They vote in. So it's really just, we treat email as it drives revenue, but we have real conversations that are on brand, and that engagement's really the separator for us. It's they feel like a part of it, they get engaged, and then my customer service guys, they're golfers. and they're replying, and we're just having, casual conversations at scale that make them feel a part of the brand because they are. So when we sell something, they're excited to buy it. It's just a very different, it's a different way to look at that. And we try to do that on all platforms. Just ask questions, get engagement. And then, when we want to sell, people are okay with it. It's not like we've been blasting them every day and they're like, dude, I already bought your clubs. I don't want this. We're asking questions, and if they don't, we'll unsubscribe them, and that's okay. It's like it's not a big deal.
And when you say that you use all platforms, because when I'm thinking about that type of engagement, I'm thinking Facebook, right? People put those questions on there and you get that engagement, which is what it's all about. Because the more engagement you get, the more visibility you're going to get on those platforms as well. Do you have somebody in place that is also responding back to them? That's part of your company?
Yeah, this is something I've gone back and forth with. So like when I first launched in 2012, to give a little more context of like the overall, my thesis on engagement, we used to do it, and then it seemed that the comment section specifically is not as impactful as it used to be. So like when I first launched, I had a video I made in my backyard. I hit a ball, sounds like a cannon goes off. It's super loud. And I asked, does your driver sound like this? And I boosted it. This is years ago. It didn't even have ads. It was just boosting. And I boosted for $300. And we got 300,000 views, 10,000 comments.
Holy cow.
And I commented on a BlackBerry until my thumbs were bleeding on every comment. I don't give a shit what they said. I'm like, thank you. That's cool. Even if it was a hateful comment. I didn't necessarily sell more from that, but it took me years of doing that to build these relationships. So they were like, oh, this is a real company. Now what we have done is we have our resources on direct messages and email. Because email's a big revenue driver. DMs, we know people are legit. And now with the amount we spend, we can't possibly hit all the comments. And we've found that, again, social media changes every day. But we found the comment section when we did our test of like commenting on there didn't really have an impact. Like it used to be like really awesome and people, but now I guess it's changed. So for me, a lot of times it's like, is that a lever, a big lever to pull? And like we've tested it, put resource on it, didn't see the ROI, whereas email and DMs, we hit everyone, so that's one pivot we've made just, over the years. But if we could, maybe, but if you're smaller starting out, I think every conversation is critical. You know what I mean?
Right. Because then you're trying to build your base as opposed to having a couple million people already in place. So, and one more question for you. We were talking about the blogs, and you said that you guys do the blogs. Is that on the website? Is that where you're doing the blog at?
Yeah, so we have an SEO guy or team agency that essentially makes like 3 blog posts a month, very specific, for search reasons, but that's not something we send to our list. So like in our opinion of email, for at least my brand, some brands definitely want to send those emails and they work great. But for me, I'd rather send a question email that gets more responses than just a blog email that's more designed for search. So I think it depends on your goal, but we tend to use like content, engagement, and then offer email mixes, and there's some other email types in there. But yeah, I mean, sending a blog is good if the blog's good, right? Gotcha. And they want to read it. So I think and I wouldn't give the blog away in the email, So like not to get too deep in the weeds of it, because I'd rather see 1 or 2 sentences with a question that leads to the blog. So you're getting them to the blog versus like, here's a newsletter, here's a whole blog right in your face. You know what I mean? So think about what your goal is. Do you want to get them to the website, or do you really want them to schedule a call with you? Like if I'm doing email marketing for my agency, I'm not going to, beat around the bush. I'd rather say, hey, listen, we want to earn you as a client. Let me do an audit for you. Like why? So I think it's different. So we go a little more direct with the B2B stuff and lead stuff because it's not the consumer space,
How do you get them to the blog? Like in that email, are you saying, give them a 1 or 2 sentence kind of little teaser, kind of pull them in like a hook, and then saying, read more here and including a link? Is that how you're doing that?
Yeah, a link. It's like, I would have like some type of cliffhanger with the link.
Okay.
It would have to be relevant to the blog, but I'd be like, can you believe this? Link. You know what I mean? And then they could read more or whatever. Gotcha. So a lot of our goals are to get them to the website to either, hopefully, and that's the one thing if we do get blog traffic, we did optimize our blog so we have products on there. So I think that's a big, now we're talking more general stuff, but like if you set them to a blog with no calls to action, they're going to take no action. Right. So it's like, we used to have a blog with no products on it. What's the point? So now it's like, it looks like a product website or an e-commerce page because we made it into one. Same with if you go to ecomgrowers.com, there's only one thing to do, and that's schedule a call. So like, again, the whole thesis is like, if you're going to ask someone to do something, ask them to do it. Keep it simple. One call to action, sign up, let's talk,
Actually, that was another question I was getting at. Are you literally asking them to do either the call of action or, the link that we just talked about to direct them to the website, or is it a hyperlink where they're clicking a word inside of the blog somewhere and, it's highlighted as a hyperlink?
That's kind of micro. It doesn't really matter per se, but like if you look at our website, it literally says, add 6 to 7 figures of revenue to your Shopify store, schedule a call.
Okay.
There's not a blog there at the top. And like there's call to action. It's all the same.
And you're not giving them a ton of information. You're not going into any detail. You're just.
We have one video that is like, you'll see, it's an engagement style, funny video. It's like there's a zombie in it, and it's
everybody loves zombies.
Yeah, I mean, it's like email marketing is dead, and it's a zombie, and it's kind of on par with our attitude with email, but it's not a long blog talking about the industry, talking about all this other random stuff to get them to become a client. We know we have value to bring, and we can drive tons of revenue. So we just tell you what our offer is. I think the one thing I've learned over, 9 years is I don't care if you're selling health insurance, if you're selling e-com marketing, email marketing, or golf clubs, just you got to dial in that offer, right? And then throw it out there and be direct with it and keep tweaking that offer until it makes sense. Like when we first started selling on the agency service side, we struggled because we didn't really know how to describe our offer, and now we pared it down to add 6 to 7 figures to your store without spending more on ads or whatever that exact thing is on the thing or on the website, and it works. And it's like, and we've got a flow that works. But I think a lot of people are like, I'll just throw a blog post up and hope that they figure out what we do, and then I do everything digital marketing, and no one cares.
Yeah.
And that's a tough thing to do is have one offer, scale that up, and be the best at that one thing. And that's not to ramble, but the reason we only do email is because we're the best at it. There's a reason we don't do ads. The reason we could do all those, SEO, CRO, website design. We could be the all-in-one digital agency. We're not the best at all those.
Find what you do and just specialize in that and do it well. I think there's too many people that try to do everything and then they become a jack of all trades and they don't do any one thing very, very well. They just do a lot of things okay.
That's what we found and from a scale standpoint, it just makes it so much easier to scale for people and systems if you only do one thing. If we did creative videos, ads, websites, there's no way we could do the revenue we're doing with 7 people.
Right.
We probably need 40 people.
Spreads it too thin.
Yeah, and so we run high margin on both sides. So we're really, we do what we like, and we add a lot of value. And like end of the day, if you can add value, drive revenue for a company, you can charge a fee. It's that simple.
Perfect. Sully, that's our time, man. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, give our listeners the information on how they can reach out to you, where they can find you at, and ask you more questions, or look into the agency, or even maybe swing a couple of them golf clubs.
Yeah. So if you guys want to reach out, bombtechgolf.com is my golf company. And then Ecom Growers, if you're an ecom brand, you can check us out. We work with brands doing 2 to 30 million on their email marketing. Then LinkedIn, you can ping me direct at Tyler Sullivan. I'm pretty active on there and talking about not working and golfing and fishing mostly. But yeah, try to live the dream, man. Because like, what's the point of work unless we're having fun,
I fully agree, 100%. Come down here to Florida, man. We'll hang out again. Come down to Sanibel. We'll take the boat out and hang out and have a beer together. Thanks so much for joining me this morning, man. I know it's a little chilly up there today, so I appreciate you getting up with me today and talking to us. And I hope that we get to talk to each other again real soon, man. It's just fun.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us this week. Go to our website at thebizreveal.com to catch all of our past episodes. We're available on all podcast apps, or you can watch any of our episodes on the Biz Reveal YouTube channel. I'm Craig Sawyer, and this is the Biz Reveal. Till next time.